Well, for those that have watched the whole series of me working on Dad's tractor, I appreciate it. This is probably going to be the last video that I do on repairing this old tractor, because some things in my life have changed and this tractor is going to have to go to a new home. So the last thing that I'm going to do, I haven't seen anyone else do on YouTube. They've talked about it a little bit, and the way that they've talked about it, I don't agree with, because what they're saying doesn't agree with the manual. So I'm going to show you the way that the service manual describes how to remove the starter clutch. All right, so let's get with it. To get this starter clutch off, certain things you have to do first. We're going to kind of use a little bit of what the book says and a little bit of what I know works. All right, and a lot of times that book it'll lead you down the right path, but it'll take you way around, you know, about how to get there. So since I just did this the other day, I know what I can get away with. We're going to remove the plug because we don't want to damage it. If you don't have air tools, this is a 1/2 inch. Yep, 1/2 inch. If you don't have air tools, then just do it the old-fashioned way. Now, be careful here. For whatever reason, things like to fall on the front side of this motor, and they are difficult to get out. These little spacers here, I found this down in there looking for this one. It had Dad had put 2 nuts in its place, so there's no telling, or whoever worked on it, no telling how long ago this thing got lost down in there and he couldn't get it out. But we've got the spring grabbers now. That's spring grabbers and a long screwdriver. That's how I got it out. So take all your head bolts off. Once you've got all your head bolts loosened, remove the head, set it aside. Now you want to take your gasket off. Okay, now you want to rotate your starter clutch to get your piston down, like so. Now that you've got your piston down, you want to take a piece of wood. I just took a piece of wood, wrapped it up with some tape, slip it down in there. Reinstall your head. We don't need to put all the bolts in. Nor do you have to torque them or tighten them. Okay, now what this is going to do is that when you turn your starter clutch, it's going to bring the piston up, but that block of wood is not going to let the piston come all the way up. It's going to allow you to turn your starter clutch off of your crankshaft without the crankshaft turning. That's the purpose. Now let's move to the back of the machine. Now we need to remove the 2 bolts from the starter so that we can remove the chain. If you do have a battery connected, it'd probably be a good idea to disconnect the negative terminal on there so you don't get any sparks flying. We don't even have a battery on this machine. It starts so easy, I don't even worry about it. Why spend $100 on a battery every 4 years when all I got to do is pull the rope once, maybe twice. Now we need to remove the starter clutch bolt counterclockwise, just like that. So now all you need to do is put an adjustable wrench on the wrenching surfaces of the starter clutch. When you turn it counterclockwise, the piston is going to come up, hit that block of wood. The block of wood hits the head and will lock the crankshaft in place. It can't go anywhere. Let's go check this thing out on the bench. Okay, so it turns smoothly and quietly in one direction. When you try to go the other way, it locks up. That is the way it is supposed to work. But we're going to break this down just for the purpose of showing you guys how to do it. What you want to do first is remove this retaining ring. If you don't have snap ring pliers, in a pinch you can use needle nose pliers. If you have short stubby ones, long ones will not work. They will bend. Been there, done that. And these aren't really all that easy sometimes, but it will work. You want to kind of hold your hand over it so they don't fly, that ring doesn't fly across the room either. If there is a spacer here, you need to go ahead and remove it. Now we're going to flip it over. We're going to put the vise right here. If you have a press, you would want to use a press and press that entire assembly down using the race of the bearing. Right there. We're going to use the exact same socket that we used to remove the starter clutch to push the bearing assembly out. And this is going to push out an assembly that has bearings, 2 bearings, a race, and 21 cams and a couple of springs. So you don't want to just go pushing all this stuff out when you don't have a method of catching some stuff that might fall on the floor, unless you're expecting what's happening. If you push this all the way out, you might lose parts that will cost you a few bucks to replace. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to tap it down a little bit and monitor it, see when it comes out. When you get down so far, about an inch, you can actually pull those cams out with a pick. So let's get started here. Okay, now you can just see the bottom edges of the cams starting to come out. Okay, you see the cams starting to spread out away from the race. At this point, you probably want to stop. Put it on the bench and check it out. See if you can pull those cams out. Okay, we got the starter clutch. We're taking it apart. These little rollers have to be oriented just a certain way. So let's take a look at this. We're coming from the operator side, pulling these out. And let's look at what the operator side of the bearing looks like. The pointy part is to the right. Got it. We're going to degrease the 21 cams and the 2 springs in a little solvent. And I want to take a little solvent on a rag and wipe that race down with it. Be careful not to get it inside your bearings. Alright, everything's been degreased, cleaned, inspected. Go ahead and check it for corrosion or wear. Check your bearings, make sure they spin freely with no catches or anything, no noises. It's all good. To get the bearing back down into the starter clutch, We want to get that as even as we can by eyeball, because we don't have a press. We're using a good old SK 1.1/8" socket, so it fits over the drive hub and on the inner surface of that bearing. So we're not pressing on the roller bearing part itself, just the inner surface of it. Let's give it a few taps. Okay, I believe we got it started. Now we're going to put it on the vise. Run it in until you have 1 inch to go. Alright, now this is the part that you can assemble completely backwards. It would allow you to do it. What we want to do is go ahead and install one spring. We're going to take some white lithium lubricant and apply some to the race only. Not a lot. You don't want to fill this up. You just want to get some in there. That's it. Axle grease, wheel bearing grease, they say in the book, is not suitable for this application. Alright, your cams. You want the half round portion of the cam to face the nut. You want the pointy end to run in a clockwise rotation. So you're going to place those, and by the way, look here, we're going to look at these backwards. The spring I just installed right here rests in that cutout. The other spring is just like it, they're identical. The other spring is going to go up high and it's going to rest in this cutout. Okay, but we're going to go ahead and install a cam, a few cams. Okay, so we got the pointy, if you're looking at this from the top down, the pointy end is going to run in a clockwise rotation. If you flip these over the wrong way, the pointy end would be going counterclockwise. You don't want that. You flip it over, pointy end's going clockwise. So we're going to slip this indentation over that spring down at the bottom, like so. Okay. You got 21 of those to go. Place your cams in first. Then we're going to come in and put the spring, the top spring on. Now the tricky part. We've got to get this spring behind the cutout in each one of those cams. This is where a pick comes in real handy. First thing we're going to do is get over the bearing. on the pointy end of each cam, you can actually reach in. See that little cutout right there? You reach your pick in there, pull it out, slide your spring down in there, and start working your way around. Okay, here's what you're fighting the whole time. The spring is trying to push the cams out. All the while you're trying to put them back in. One of the guys on YouTube actually used a rubber band. Once he got them in place, he used a rubber band to keep them there. Not a bad idea. I don't know if it's necessary. He was using a press, so kind of had to do that, I guess. We're going to use a poor man's press. Just kind of tap this a little bit. I've got most of them. The ones that are trying to come out on me, I've got them held in with my fingers. We'll just tap this a little bit. Anytime something tries to come out, you need to try to put it back in place. You could get these things in a jam pretty quick. Okay, everything feels good. All right, I'm going to press them in with the vise. Okay, I believe that's it. Let me take a peek at it. Yep, that's it. It's seated right there. And before we put the retain ring on there, I want to check it. It does not work. So we got a cam in there backwards. I can feel it dragging. Lovely. I dropped the assembly back down just enough to where I could inspect the pointy ends of those cams, and I had one cam in there backwards. So we got free operation this way, no operation the other way. A lot less lube than we had earlier. We've got to install the spacer and the retaining ring. Make sure your groove's cleaned out. Drop your spacer in there. Take your retaining ring pliers, cover it with your hand so it doesn't fly across the shop. Okay, test it still works good. All right, ready to install. The first step to putting the starter clutch back on the tractor is to remove that block that you have on top of the piston. Now you want to install a brand new head gasket. Install a head gasket and line up your holes. Install your head with your spark plug hole facing forward. Go ahead and put your bolts in. Keep in mind, don't put the end bolts in just yet. These get torqued to 20 foot-pounds. Install your spacers on top of your head, your heat shield, Install your spark plug. Do not connect it. Clean and oil your crankshaft. Install your starter clutch. You're going to spin it on until it turns the crankshaft. Just like so. Install the bolt. Tighten it until it turns the crankshaft. Like so. Install your chain. You want 1 inch of slack. In other words, this thing is running pretty loose. Now you can connect your spark plug, test it, spins counterclockwise without the crankshaft turning. You try to turn it the other way, it's turning the crankshaft. That's the way it's supposed to work right there. Okay, it's in neutral, choke. Really need a starter rope. I'm gonna keep doing it this way, don't I? Wind it up. And pull. I've got the truck battery hooked up with jumper cables to where the battery would be on the tractor. We're going to try to start it using the electric starter.